Hey guys, and welcome to the Awaken Imagination podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining me today. And this is actually going to be part two of the Power of I Am series. Now, the first video or first podcast was already released last week, and really this needed to be broken up into two parts because there is a lot to cover on this topic. And as I mentioned several times in the last podcast episode, um, this is a really, really important topic, and it doesn't get the kind of speaking and recognition that it deserves, especially if we're talking about conscious manifestation. I mean, this really is the cornerstone of conscious manifestation. It's having the understanding of I am, or awareness, what Neville Goddard referred to as God. So today's going to be part two of the series, and I strongly recommend, if you haven't heard or seen the video first on part one, definitely go back and check that one out. It's going to help make more sense. If you dive in with this one first, you might be confused in a couple parts. So you can definitely pause where this is at and go check out the first part one before diving into this. All right. And also, just like just like the first one, I'm going to be releasing this both on my podcast and on YouTube because I want to make sure that this one is readily available for people to find. Okay, well, without further ado, let's dive in. There's a lot to cover today. Now, quick recap on part one and just some of the things that we went over. We talked in quite a bit of detail about awareness, or I am, and what this I am is, and what this means. If you've been a follower of Neville or the law of assumption, you have inevitably heard this phrase before: I am that I am. And what exactly all that means, going into detail about how that awareness of being, or that awareness that you have, that you exist, well, that is God. That is what we are referring to when we say that you are God, when we say that you are the God of your reality. What we're talking about essentially is that awareness of being, just that awareness that you exist, the awareness that is aware of your thoughts, your moods, your observations, the external world around you, just the thing or substance that is aware. Because who is the one watching your thoughts? Who is the one that is aware of your thoughts? Right? Well, that is God. So that's what we're referring to. And I guess first place I want to start in today's episode is talking more about the self-concept. Because for anyone who has been studying the law, or been following Neville and law of assumption for a while, you have probably heard nonstop about this self-concept and how important it is. Anything that we want to change begins with the change of self, or this concept of self, as Neville would always say. Well, everybody is talking about this, which is good, because I absolutely agree that this is fundamental when it comes to a change in the exterior world, the 3D reality. If we want to see a change there has to be a change with the concept of self. But that begins to beg the question of, well, what is this self-concept that everybody talks about? And how do we change that? What does that mean, change your self-concept? Like, how do we go about even approaching this? And this is a question that I get asked often. A lot of confusion from people about what exactly this means and how the hell do we go about doing it. Well, before we can talk about how to change it, we need to understand what it is. And in the most basic terms, in the simplest way that I could describe it, your self-concept is the beliefs and assumptions, the expectations, all of those things, it determines your thoughts and moods, but it's your beliefs and assumptions about you and other people and the world around you. And this is really, really important to take away, because where a lot of people are getting confused about self-concept is they're mistaking this for self-esteem. Now, what do I mean by that? Self-esteem is how we feel about ourselves or how we view ourselves. And this is an important concept, and it's an important aspect of the self-concept, but it's not the entirety. Okay? So basically, what I mean by that is self-concept encompasses so much more than just how you view yourself. Your self-concept is also how you view other people, the stories that you tell about other people, whether that be in general or specific people in your life. So whatever the stories are that you are identifying with when it comes to you, when it comes to others, and when it comes to the world at large, that is all part of the self-concept. So it's more than just, when we talk about changing your self-concept, it's more than just saying affirmations like, I am loved, I am wanted, I am cherished, and all of that. That is targeting specifically your self-esteem, which is good, right? We want to identify and change parts of our self-esteem if we have lower self-esteem, or if we don't feel worthy, if we don't feel wanted or chosen or loved. These are all important things to identify and ultimately things that we want to change. But one of the most common questions that I get asked is, Missy, how is it that, I've been working on my self-concept and I totally know my worth. I think I'm loved. I know that I'm deserving. I know that I'm worthy, but my SP still thinks that, this, and that, or my SP is still not talking to me. My SP is still fighting with me, and all of these terrible things. Like, why is my SP not conforming when my self-concept is amazing? Well, to that I would say, your self-esteem is amazing, but the story that you're telling about SP is not on point. What is the story that you are repeating and that you are entertaining and ultimately accepting as true? Are you saying things like, my SP is not talking to me, we're in no contact, he thinks that this and that, I can't get rid of this third party, he disrespects me, she doesn't want me, she thinks that I'm this, and that. I mean, these are all stories that we continue to identify with. And you can think that you're totally worthy of love, and you can totally feel like you are deserving and loved and wanted and cherished. But if you're still entertaining the stories about this other person, well, then you haven't fully changed your concept of self. Let's break down the words really quick. Concept of self, your self-concept. These are the conceptions that you have about the self. And the self is all of the things that you identify with, right? So your self is the beliefs, the assumptions that you hold about everything around you. That is the self. How you view other people, the stories that you tell about other people and you and everything at large. That is the self. So the conceptions that you have about the self, about you, and how you identify with the world around you, that is your self-concept. And I think this is paramount to understand, because people keep repeating these stories about their SPs and about how other people treat them and all of the things that they've encountered in the past. Well, we're not really changing the self-concept if we're repeating the same stories, are we? Of course not. And this is a fundamental aspect to understand about your self-concept. That It is it is encompassing all of you, all of your beliefs, all of your assumptions, all of the stories that you're telling about your life and the other people in it. So these are all things that we need to be mindful of. The second thing that I really need to talk about when it comes to self-concept is that this is not really who you are. And for so long, we have identified with the self-concept. We have continued to, just accept without question that we are all of these stories that we've identified with, and we just continue to accept it as true, as if we are this person, we are these thoughts, we are the emotions and reactions that we have. But that's not who we really are. And that is the key takeaway to all of this. That we are not this self that we have identified with. This self is just the ego, which is another word for self-concept. The ego is just that sense of I. Ego is literally the Latin translation of the word I. So it is this false sense of self, this false sense of I, that we have just blindly and, willingly or unwillingly just accepted and continue to accept that these are the facts, this is how it is, this is how I am, and there's nothing to change. There's no way to change it. And this gets into the key aspect here, because we have identified and we have been attached for so long to all of these beliefs and assumptions and these stories. We have been so attached and so accepting for so long that we have mistaken this to be who we really are. But it's not. We are not our beliefs. We are not our assumptions. We are not our thoughts. We are none of those things. And because we are not those things, that means that we have ultimately the power to change them. And that is the entire point. Because who you really are, who you actually are, is awareness. You are that unconditioned awareness who is just aware of these thoughts. You are just the awareness that is aware of the circumstances of your life and aware of your reactions, aware of your feelings. That awareness is actually who you are. Not this concept of self, not this ego or the sense of I. That is all illusion. That is all separate from you. If you can identify it, if you can observe it, well, that means that you are not that thing. You could not observe something that you actually are. You couldn't look at it in the relation of subject and object. When you notice your thoughts, when you notice your circumstances, when you notice your reactions, just the act of observing them means that there's the relationship there between the subject and the object, which means that those thoughts, those beliefs, and those circumstances are separate from you. Let me ask you a question really quick. Can you right now perceive the subject? Can you perceive the perceiver? Can you perceive your awareness? Can you perceive the one who is perceiving? No. No, you can't, because that's who you actually are. You cannot perceive the perceiver as if it's an object separate from you, because that is who you actually are. Now, I know this might be getting a little out there and maybe a little bit challenging to understand, so I'm going to say the same thing that I said in the first part of this series. This may take a couple of times listening to this podcast or listening to this episode wherever you're watching it. This may take a couple of times to really sink in and really begin to understand this. But it is crucial that we understand this, because once you understand that you are separate from your beliefs and your assumptions and your thoughts and all of these stories that we have identified with all this time, once you understand that that's not who you really are, that is a power that is rarely ever felt and rarely ever identified, because that means you can change no matter what. No matter what the circumstance, no matter what the reactions have been, no matter what thoughts have come up for you, if you are separate from them, then you can change them. You can change it, always. Because as the perceiver, you're just looking through different lenses, that's all. You can change the lens that you are looking at this life. You can change the lens that you are looking through. You can begin to separate yourself from all of these things that you've identified with and start identifying with other things. You can. But the first thing that we need to do is detach from all of these terrible ideas and all of these silly notions that we have been attached to and that we have identified with without question for so long. And you have the ability to do this, because who you really are is awareness. That is God. And God is unconditioned consciousness. God is ever present in everything, everyone. We all have this awareness. We all have this awareness of being, this knowing that we exist, this awareness that we are conscious, that we are alive. That awareness that everybody has, that is God. That is God. And that awareness, this unconditioned awareness that has been conditioned by all of the stories and all of your beliefs and all of your assumptions, you can begin to detach from all of that. You can almost think of it like outfits that you wear or costumes that you wear. You have worn this identity like a suit or like a costume, and you've worn this costume for so long that you've accidentally begun to identify with the costume, thinking that this is who you actually are. But you're not. You can take off the costume. You can change the costume. You don't have to continue to identify with whatever you are wearing now, because you are not the things that you have been conditioned to believe. You're never in a place where change is impossible, ever. That is never, ever a thing. Change is always possible, no matter what the circumstance, because circumstances truly never matter, and this is why. You are not your circumstances. You are not your thoughts. You are not your beliefs. Your thoughts are just the byproduct of your self-concept. Your thoughts are just the byproduct of your beliefs and assumptions. When you change your beliefs and assumptions, your thoughts change with it. And I know this to be true because this has been my experience, along with the experience of hundreds, if not thousands of people. Change is always, always possible, no matter what. And that is why this is so important to understand the relationship between I and my Father, the relationship between awareness and the conception of self, the relationship between consciousness and the ego. I and my Father are one. The ego and awareness are one, but the Father is greater than I. Awareness is greater than my concept of self. The conceiver and the conception are one, but the conceiver is greater than the conception. They are one, but the Father is greater than I. Your awareness is greater than any conception of self, any fears, any doubts, any uncertainties, any circumstance. It doesn't matter. It never matters. And that is liberation. That is ultimate freedom. And when you know this, when you know this to be true and you understand this at the depths of your being, you will be set free. And this is how you ultimately learn that you can manifest literally anything that you want. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This one was a little bit shorter, but really, really, really important. And like I said, if you need to go back and listen to this one a couple of times, if you need to go back and listen to part 1 first, as many times as you need. I understand that it might take a few tries. What may not be taken away the first try. But we want to understand this. We want to understand the relationship here. We want to understand the power of I am. Because this is freedom. This is a freedom unlike anything that you've ever known. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I thank you again for being here. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to tell your friends about this podcast. Share this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoy more content about conscious creation and manifestation. And in the meantime, as always, till we meet again, please take care, be well, and never forget how powerful you truly are. Happy manifesting, guys.